Hey everybody, and today I'm going to be taking a little break from doing episodes that we would have seen in Doctor Who, and I'm going to talk about an alternative to a storyline that we actually got. So by this point, probably all of you have seen The Timeless Children. I don't feel like it's spoiler territory talking about the contents of that episode anymore, but if you haven't seen it yet, please don't click on this video, go watch one of my other videos, as I will be talking very heavily about what happened in that episode. So in The Timeless Children, the big revelation is that the Doctor has had many previous incarnations pre-William Hartnell, and that the Doctor was also one of the founders of Time Lord Society. Now, this idea sounds terrible and something that Chris Chibnall just plucked out of thin air, right? Well, it was actually originally a variant of an idea that Andrew Cartmel came up with in the 1980s. Now, anyone who's been watching any of these Doctor Who videos I've been doing recently, you might know the name Andrew Cartmel, as he was the script editor during the 7th Doctor's era. And towards the end of his run, when he was pitching and getting pitched for Story for Ghostlight, he greenlit the idea for the Doctor's home planet being expanded upon and revealed, and he wanted to talk about the origins of the Doctor. Now, the outcome of this wasn't too dissimilar to what we got in Doctor Who in the main series, but this is so much better. We didn't get Andrew Cartmel's explanation in Ghostlight, unfortunately, because the story changed and was focused more around Ace, but we did get it in a book a couple of years later called Longbarrow. Now, unfortunately, if you want to buy this book, it's going to set you back about £1,000, maybe £800, but the gist of the story is what I'm going to talk about in this video today. Now, obviously, spoilers are ahead for the Longbarrow novel. If you are planning on getting this novel, do look on eBay, there are a few copies of it left, but as I say, it is very expensive. After the story for Ghostlight was put on the shelf and remade for Ace, this story was later re-released by Virgin Publishing in 1997, where this version of the story was written by Mark Platt. This book also seems to set up the Doctor Who TV movie, as it has the Doctor being mandated to send the Master's remains back to Gallifrey. But I suppose I should start off with the actual plot of this story before talking about any of the finer details of the Doctor's origins. As the Doctor begins to feel that a regeneration is imminent, the TARDIS is drawn back to Gallifrey. More specifically, to the House of Longbarrow, where for over 600 years his 44 cousins have been trapped. But for whatever reason, when he is there, only 6 of them are around. As the Doctor tries to solve this mystery, it becomes apparent that this is part of some bigger conspiracy. Other side notes are that this story would have featured Romana, Ace, Leela, and K9. As I mentioned earlier, it is also key to note that Romana's in this, as she is the one who sent the Doctor away to obtain the Master's remains and return them to Gallifrey, starting the events of the TV movie and somewhat making this book canon. Now, the reason that this book is so noteworthy and remembered is not because of that story is quite basic, to be honest. The reason that it's remembered is because it endeavoured to show us an awful lot about the Doctor's past and about Gallifrey as a whole. Now, not having a copy of it myself, I am paraphrasing here, but the gist of it is that long before Time Lords ever walked Gallifrey, there was a sisterhood led by someone called Pythia. Now, this sisterhood ruled Gallifrey until Omega, Rassilon, and a character called the Other, more about him later, were able to overthrow the sisterhood. Now, this meant that there was a curse put upon Gallifrey by Pythia and her sisters, that no children would ever be born on Gallifrey ever again. Now, the sisterhood would end up being very important to Doctor Who, as they later became the Sisterhood of Khan, further explaining why they were able to accelerate the 8th Doctor's regeneration. But back to the story. With this newfound infertility, these scientists worked very hard to re-establish society on the planet, where Rassilon was able to engineer people who could regenerate. Gallifrey's inhabitants from here on in are created artificially. As Rassilon did this, Omega did what he was famous for, and he engineered stars, harnessing the power of time travel for all of Time Lord society. Now, we know about their stories have always been hinted at, but what about the Other? Now, the Other and his granddaughter, assumedly, were very much against Rassilon's tampering, And in order not to be a part into this, he jumped into the very power source that these Time Lords were artificially created with. In doing this, thousands of years later, this other was reincarnated as the Doctor. Oddly enough, the Doctor has no memory of this at all, but Susan does. And all those years later is absolutely convinced that the Doctor is her grandfather. Now, if you found any of that absolutely confusing, that's because it is. To bullet point it, I would put it like this. The Sisterhood of Khan were also Wanderers of Gallifrey in the early days, as well as Rassilon and Omega, who were able to engineer Time Lord society through their very vast scientific knowledge. The ability to regenerate is artificial, and Time Lords are grown to be adults from birth. One of the Doctor's ancestors was parting to this, even if he didn't agree with it, and inadvertently, the Doctor is responsible for the very beginning of Time Lord society. Oh, and Time Lords themselves cannot reproduce. Don't forget that important detail. Now, this raises a lot of questions, like why did the Time Lords erase the Doctor's or the other's role from this? Do they know that the Doctor and the other are linked, and is this why they have disliked him all these years? Is this why they've always tried to keep him under their thumb? It definitely opens up a lot of possibilities, but it also keeps the integrity of the Doctor in check, and I really like it. Now, I will leave that up to you guys if that is a better explanation. Personally, I think it is. I think it makes a lot more sense that Omega and Rassilon actually had a hand in the creation of Gallifrey, whereas Tecteun, whoever that is the canon reason. I also think that having the Sisterhood of Khan actually be Gallifrey's, basically the original settlers, is quite an interesting concept. I really like that. I would love to see that explored in the series. And I think it just offers so much more ambiguity to the Doctor even still. So he doesn't even know that happened to him, you know? Having the Doctor be the all-powerful hero is not really what the show is about. And if it were the case, it would be by accident or without him knowing. Stephen Moffat once said it best that if the Doctor knew that he was a hero in a television show, he'd be very surprised. He'd be very confused. And I think this explanation kind of feeds into that. He doesn't know that he helped create Time Lord Society. The only issue I would ever have with this is that it seems to put some ambiguity towards him and Susan actually being related, which, no, it's definitely the case that one and Susan are related, you know? So why am I telling you this? Maybe it's to bring up the point that if you don't like something about canon, there's always something else that's been pre-established that you can always turn to, or you can have your own opinion. You can make your own idea of what canon is, because canon is what you make of it. Just because you dislike something that's happened in the series does not mean that you have to dislike everything, or that has to remain part of your view of the show. If you don't like something, go ahead and think of something better, you know? But yes, this idea was absolutely fascinating to me when I found out about it, and I don't know why it doesn't get a lot more coverage. Maybe because the book is a little bit rarer than I'd like to admit, but yeah, I would love to do more videos like this about little tidbits from the Doctor Who book canon. Yeah, leave a like on this video, guys, stay subscribed, and hopefully I'll have some more content out for you guys soon.